What's up, Chiefs Kingdom? Noah Gray here, tight end for the Kansas City Chiefs. Make sure you like, share, and subscribe to Josh's channel and check out showmefootball.com for more.
What is up, Chiefs Kingdom? Welcome back to another video on my channel. My name is Josh Fan of showmefootball.com and arrowheadaddict.com, covering your Kansas City Chiefs. And following the devastating injury to Rashee Rice this past Sunday against the Los Angeles Chargers, when Patrick Mahomes accidentally took out his knee, we're all prepared for Rashee Rice to miss an extended period of time, if not the entire season, with a torn ACL. We haven't gotten an update yet, but odds are that Rashee Rice likely will miss the rest of the 2024 season, which means the Chiefs are down yet another wide receiver. They would be down their wide receiver 1 and 2 when you consider that Hollywood Brown is also set to miss the 2024 regular season at the very least. And that's a massive hit to Kansas City's offense, especially with Isaiah Pacheco also being out for an extended period of time. It's just not looking good right now for the Chiefs' offensive personnel group, and the wide receiver depth chart has all of a sudden gotten extremely thin. And this was the entire reason Kansas City spent so many resources on the wide receiver position this offseason. And now all of that has seemingly been erased in the first 4 weeks of the season, leaving a lot of us wanting the Chiefs to address the wide receiver position through a mid-season trade. Which brings us to this video of 4 wide receiver trade candidates that the Kansas City Chiefs could realistically target in the wake of the Rashee Rice injury. So the first guy that immediately comes to mind for me, I just made a video about him a week ago, is someone that we could trade for even prior to the Rashee Rice injury, just because I think it would be a good value, and I still thought the Kansas City Chiefs wide receiver core could use some help with the Hollywood Brown injury, but I think this would make a lot of sense for both sides. Deontay Johnson of the Carolina Panthers is the first call that I would make if I were Brett Veach and the Kansas City Chiefs. And first of all, it makes sense because Deontay Johnson is probably the closest thing that you can get to Rashee Rice and the closest thing that you can get to a star receiver, all things considered. It's going to be really hard to replace Rashee Rice. It's going to be nearly impossible to replace him at this point in the season. But the closest guy to him, I think, could be Deontay Johnson. He could fill a lot of his production. He could play a very similar role to Rashee Rice. Or you could even play some Deontay Johnson on the outside and have Xavier Worthy take over the Rashee Rice role. And the reason I say that is because I think Xavier Worthy would do fine in that role and he could grow into it. That play to ice the Chargers game that was to Xavier Worthy, that play 100% was originally drawn up to Rashee Rice, and Xavier Worthy ran it perfectly. But back to my point about Deontay Johnson, I think you could play him all over the field. He's versatile. He's very productive. He's not necessarily a perennial 1,000-yard receiver, but beggars can't be choosers at this point. He's still very productive. He's basically a safe bet to get 700 to 800 yards receiving every single year. He could definitely be a comfortable target for Patrick Mahomes now that you lost Rashee Rice, who was this team's leading receiver before going down. And then, if you're Carolina, you're not going anywhere. They're probably the worst team in the NFL by a pretty wide margin. And Deontay Johnson's set to be an unrestricted free agent after this season. You're not going anywhere. You're not contending for anything anytime soon. So why not just recoup some assets for Deontay Johnson? It seems like they traded for him in an attempt to try and be competitive this year, and it just didn't work out. And now it's better probably just to get an asset back for him instead of letting him rot in Carolina. And there's also predated interest in Deontay Johnson. The Kansas City Chiefs tried to trade for him this past offseason, but they couldn't come to a deal because the Pittsburgh Steelers didn't want to deal him to the Chiefs within the AFC. And so they sent him to Carolina instead. But with Carolina being in the NFC, I'm sure they'd have no issues dealing with the Kansas City Chiefs. I would love this for a lot of reasons. I love the way Deontay Johnson plays. He's very shifty. He's a very good route runner himself. He struggled with drops earlier in his career, but he seems to have cleaned that up. He would be a productive player on this team. That's the first call that I would make if I were the Kansas City Chiefs. And then the next call that I would make, the second, if Deontay Johnson doesn't work out, I'm calling the Cleveland Browns to see what they would want for Amari Cooper. And this one also makes a lot of sense. He would be the next best option after Amari Cooper as far as a wide receiver you could get that's available that can still be considered a star by a lot of people. Amari Cooper would be a fantastic addition First of all, I think he would be a true alpha number one wide receiver for this team. Yeah, he struggled with drops this year for Cleveland, but that situation in Cleveland is just a dumpster fire. They don't look very competitive this year. The Deshaun Watson contract looks like a dud. But Amari Cooper is still someone that I think could provide a ton of value to this team. I mean, just look at his past 2 seasons with the Browns. He had over 1,200 yards in 2023, and then the year before that, he had over 1,100 yards and 9 touchdowns. This is still someone that's playing really good football right now, and I don't think he'd cost that much because he's 30 years old now. I don't think you'd have to give up that significant of a draft pick to get him. The main holdup for this would be his contract. At least that's what a lot of people would say. But before this season, the Cleveland Browns actually converted a lot of his base salary. They converted most of it into a signing bonus, which means that his contract, or his base salary for his contract for this year, is only a little bit over $1 million. The Kansas City Chiefs could absolutely afford that. And it would also allow the Chiefs to make an additional move at wide receiver if they really wanted to, because he's just not owed very much for the rest of this year. If you were to go on Twitter right now, you'd have a lot of people telling you that Amari Cooper hasn't been very good this year, but he still has 16 catches for 148 yards and 2 touchdowns, and he also just had an 80-yard touchdown against the Las Vegas Raiders, but it was called back due to a holding penalty on the Browns' offensive line. And so he would already have over 200 yards if not for that getting called back this year. And I still think he could be extremely productive playing for the Kansas City Chiefs. He'd give you a true alpha wide receiver on the outside. You just throw Xavier Worthy in the slot for the rest of the year, and then maybe cross your fingers you can get Hollywood Brown back for playoff time. And I think that would be a very good wide receiver situation to be in. So if you can't get Deontay Johnson, who I'd like to have because he's younger, and I think there could be a long-term fit there for him in Kansas City, whereas Amari Cooper would maybe be a short-term guy, I still think this would be a very good move and a very good consolation prize. Deontay Johnson and Amari Cooper are certainly at the top of my list. Then the next guy that I'm working my way down to is DeAndre Hopkins of the Tennessee Titans. There was obviously a lot of interest in DeAndre Hopkins a couple years ago when he was a free agent after being released by the Arizona Cardinals. But the Titans ended up giving him a contract that the Kansas City Chiefs simply could not afford, especially since Chris Jones' negotiations at the time were holding up a lot of money that the Kansas City Chiefs otherwise would have had. The Titans are already 0-3. They don't seem to be doing anything. There could still be a situation here where the Titans simply don't want to help the Chiefs within the AFC, but I mean, it would make a lot of sense for them to offload DeAndre Hopkins at this point in time. He's still also very productive. He had over 1,000 yards last year for the Tennessee Titans when a lot of people thought he was on the downward trend, but he's still putting together very good football. So far this year, it's been kind of a slow start for him, but I would attribute that more to the quarterback play of Will Levis and just also the dumpster fire that is the Tennessee Titans this year. You're looking for a guy that could at least help you for this year. That would be DeAndre Hopkins. Yeah, he's on the older side, and the reason he started on my list behind Amari Cooper and Deontay Johnson is simply because I think those guys have more left in the tank, but I would still welcome a DeAndre Hopkins addition. And again, at this point in the season, beggars can't be choosers. We're looking for some wide receiver help. We're a little bit desperate. DeAndre Hopkins, honestly, as far as compensation goes to get him, if I were the Kansas City Chiefs, I would dangle that L'Jarius Sneed third-round pick that they just got from the Tennessee Titans. I would offer it back to them and say, hey, take this third-round pick back, pay most of DeAndre Hopkins' remaining salary for us, but we'll take him off your hands, and we'll give you the asset back for him. I think that would be perfect. The Titans would be a little bit foolish to say no to that, but if you're the Kansas City Chiefs, definitely try to get the Tennessee Titans to pay most of his remaining salary just so you're not on the hook for the rest of D-Hop's contract. But this is definitely a move I would look into if the Amari Cooper and Deontay Johnson situations don't work out. And then the fourth player that I have in mind is Tyler Boyd, also a Tennessee Titans wide receiver. This was someone that a lot of us Chiefs fans talked about over the offseason that we could sign for wide receiver depth. He ended up going to the Tennessee Titans on a one-year deal. Still only 29 years old. Has over 6,000 receiving yards in his career. He was a very good player for the Cincinnati Bengals for many years before signing with the Titans as a free agent. He had a very quiet market. But the main argument for us not signing him, I remember from a lot of people, was he crossed over too much with Rashee Rice. which was true at the time. But now that Rashee Rice is slated to miss a lot of time, that would be a perfect situation for Tyler Boyd to step into, to come in here and replace Rashee Rice. And I think he'd be extremely solid. Also off to a slow start this year in Tennessee, but again, quarterback play very bad, offense very bad. I just think you have to give these guys a little bit of slack when you consider the situations that they're in. That's why they're available for trade in the first place. And I also think Tyler Boyd is a lot more gettable than DeAndre Hopkins. He's obviously not as good, but he's more gettable because he only signed a 1-year deal, and the Titans aren't competitive this year. So I would definitely be calling the Titans about pretty much all of their receivers to see who is available. I mean, you could even acquire Tyler Boyd and DeAndre Hopkins potentially. If they don't ask for too much for D-Hop, you could throw another 6th or 7th round pick in there and say, hey, we'll take Tyler Boyd off your hands as well. I mean, it's just a thought, but I would definitely call the Tennessee Titans and see what they would want for Tyler Boyd. I mean, that could not cost more than a day 3 pick to get him, given that he's on a 1-year deal. Tyler Boyd has been one of the league's best slot receivers over the past decade. Maybe not what he once was with the Cincinnati Bengals in his prime, but definitely would fill the Rashee Rice role. He would transition here pretty much seamlessly, replacing Rashee Rice. And then if Rashee Rice were to ever return at some point, Tyler Boyd just gives you good insurance and another wide receiver that you can depend on. And that's what we're looking for right now, is wide receivers we can depend on. Otherwise, we're looking at Sky Moore and McCole Hardman getting snaps, and we don't want that. And then a couple honorable mention guys that didn't make it onto my list, but I would still maybe look into what they would cost, is Jalen Hyatt of the New York Giants, similar to the Kadarius Toney trade a few years ago. Former high draft pick that hasn't worked out for whatever reason. Jalen Hyatt has hardly played for New York this year, but he's got a lot of speed. I still think there's a lot of untapped potential there. And I know people get scared when they hear Kadarius Toney and how that all went down. And I think he was a lot more expensive than Jalen Hyatt even would be. But Jalen Hyatt, I still think, has a lot of talent. And then John Mechie of the Houston Texans, who can't seem to get on the field there, but has a lot of talent. Those were guys that I would have been a lot more interested before the Rashee Rice injury, just as guys that aren't getting on the field at their current spots, and the Kansas City Chiefs could just look at that avenue to add some talent to the wide receiver position even more, especially with the Hollywood Brown injury. The reason that I've kind of bumped them down to honorable mention, though, at this point is because the Chiefs are a lot more desperate, and I don't think you can bank on those guys. Like, if you were to trade for one of them, I'm not going to set super high expectations for them. And at this point, we need someone that can step in here and play right now and actually give the Chiefs valuable snaps at wide receiver. And I don't know for sure that those guys could do that. So those are 4 wide receiver trade targets that I think the Kansas City Chiefs could look into. I want to hear from you guys down in the comments, though, what you think, who you would like to see the Chiefs target, if you agree, disagree with any of my suggestions. Let me know down below. With all that being said, make sure you like, share, and subscribe so more Chiefs fans can find this. And make sure you check out my work on ShowMeFootball.com and ArrowheadAddict.com for more. I'll see you all in the next one. Go Chiefs!